Some islands don't just reject visitors. They make sure you never come back. Whether it's venomous snakes or entire civilizations vanishing without a trace, these places are the ultimate no-go zones. Some are so lethal that governments have outlawed them. Others? The people who dared to explore never lived to explain. There's an island where snakes rain from the trees, one where the ground itself is a death trap, and another so hostile that setting foot on it could be your last mistake. Some are guarded by nature's most vicious killers, others by locals who don't give second warnings. And a few? Let's just say the ones who arrived, never left. If you've ever dreamed of running away to a deserted island, think thrice, because some of these places don't just keep you out, they keep you forever. Here are 15 islands so dangerous, they're better left alone. Number 15. Ramree Island. If you think Jaws was terrifying, wait until you hear what happened on Ramree Island. Off Myanmar's coast, this swampy nightmare is the site of one of the deadliest animal attacks in history. And the culprits? Hundreds of massive, hungry saltwater crocodiles. In 1945, during World War II, Japanese soldiers retreated through Ramree's mangroves, desperately trying to escape British forces. But instead of freedom, they walked straight into an ambush, nature's version. The waters were crawling with the largest reptiles on Earth, and what happened next was pure horror. Soldiers were dragged under one by one, their screams echoing through the jungle. Survivors later described the night as a massacre, hundreds of men devoured alive. Today, Ramree's mangroves remain just as deadly, home to crocodiles large enough to swallow a human whole. Whether or not the body count was exaggerated, one thing is clear. If you value your limbs, don't set foot in those waters. Number 14. Navassa Island. Navassa Island sits between Haiti and Jamaica, but no one really wants it. Uninhabited, cut off by towering cliffs, and drowning in a brutal past, it's been left to rot. In the 1800s, Navassa became a forced labor camp, where enslaved workers mined guano, yes, bird poop, under horrific conditions. Heat exhaustion, disease, and abuse turned the island into a graveyard. Many who arrived never left, and their suffering is said to haunt the island to this day. But that's not its only dark chapter. Some reports claim that during the Cold War, Navassa was a chemical weapons testing site. If true, that means the ground itself could still be toxic. Technically, you could visit. But why would you? Between its haunted history, rumored contamination, and sheer isolation, Navassa is a place best left to the wind, the sea, and whatever still lingers in its shadows. Some places are abandoned for a reason. Number 13. Poveglia Island. There are abandoned places, and then there's Poveglia, a place so cursed that even ghost hunters avoid it. Floating in the Venetian lagoon, Poveglia is one of the most haunted locations on Earth. During the Black Plague, tens of thousands of infected victims were dumped here to die. Some were burned in mass graves, others were left to rot. It's said that over half of the island's soil is made of human ash. Then, in the 1920s, someone had the bright idea to build a mental asylum there. Patients reported seeing tortured spirits and hearing screams in the night. The head doctor? Well, legend says he went mad and threw himself from the bell tower. Whether the stories are true or not, one thing is certain. Poveglia's energy is wrong. Even today, no one dares set foot there. Fishermen refuse to cast their nets nearby, and multiple buyers have tried to purchase the island, only to back out in terror. Some places aren't just haunted, they refuse to be forgotten. Number 12. Okunoshima. At first glance, Okunoshima is adorable. This small Japanese island is overrun with fluffy rabbits that hop right up to tourists, looking for snacks. But beneath all that cuteness, a terrifying past. During World War II, Okunoshima was so secretive it was erased from maps. Why? It was home to a massive chemical weapons plant, producing thousands of tons of poison gas for the Japanese military. After the war, the facility was abandoned, and the government buried its dark history. But what about the rabbits? Some believe they were once test subjects, freed when the lab shut down. Others think they were introduced later to cover up the island's sinister reputation. Whatever the truth, the poison still lingers. Some areas remain too dangerous to enter, and traces of chemical contamination have been found in the soil. Cute? Absolutely. Safe? Not so much. Okunoshima may be full of bunnies, but its history is anything but soft. Number 11. Ilha da Queimada Grande. If you hate snakes, stop watching now, because this is the stuff of nightmares. Ilha da Queimada Grande, better known as Snake Island, is so deadly that Brazil's government has banned civilians from setting foot on it. The reason? It's home to thousands of golden lancehead vipers, one of the most venomous snakes in the world. Their venom doesn't just kill, it melts flesh. And with an estimated 1 snake per square meter, there's nowhere to run. Step in the wrong spot, and you're done. Legend has it that the island's last human inhabitants, a lighthouse keeper and his family, were killed by a swarm of snakes in the night. By morning, they were gone. Now, only a handful of researchers are allowed on the island, always accompanied by medical teams just in case. If you ever get an invite, be smart. Politely decline. Number 10. Hashima Island. Once, Hashima Island was a booming metropolis. It was a place filled with people, animals, and a lot of bang stuff. Today, it looks like a haunted battleship floating off Japan's coast. In the early 1900s, Hashima was a coal mining hub. Thousands of workers lived in cramped high-rises, surrounded by nothing but concrete and sea. When the coal ran out in 1974, the island was abandoned overnight. What remained? A decaying ghost city, collapsing buildings, rusted staircases, and streets frozen in time. But Hashima's past is darker than just an economic collapse. During World War II, forced laborers from Korea and China were sent to the island under brutal conditions. Many never left. Survivors described suffocating tunnels, constant cave-ins, and starvation-level rations. Now, nature is reclaiming Hashima. The sea batters its foundations, and entire structures crumble into the waves. Tourists can visit parts of the island, but the deeper ruins remain strictly off-limits. Too dangerous to enter, too haunted to forget. Number 9. Socotra Island. If Dr. Seuss and an alien planet had a baby, it would be Socotra. Floating off the coast of Yemen, this island is home to one of the strangest landscapes on Earth. 1/3 of its plant species exist nowhere else. Dragon's blood trees with bleeding red sap, bottle-shaped plants that look like something out of a sci-fi movie. It's less like an island and more like another world. But for all its beauty, Socotra is unforgiving. Cut off from modern civilization for centuries, its remote location makes travel nearly impossible. When cyclones hit, there's nowhere to run. Shipwrecks litter the coastline, and local legends speak of sailors who lost their minds trying to escape. Even in 2025, large parts of the island remain completely unexplored. Which raises the question, what else is hiding in Socotra's alien landscape? Maybe some places are better left untouched. Number 8. Isla Bermeja. Isla Bermeja wasn't just another island. It was a landmark. It appeared on maps for centuries, marking a key point in the Gulf of Mexico. Sailors knew it, navigators documented it, and then it vanished. By the 20th century, Isla Bermeja was nowhere to be found. Satellite scans, sonar sweeps, nothing. It was as if the island had never existed. Some believe it was swallowed by the sea, lost to rising waters, or a massive earthquake. Others think it was erased, intentionally. Theories suggest the island was destroyed to manipulate maritime borders and hide valuable oil reserves. Or maybe it was never real to begin with, a cartographic mistake that lasted for centuries. Even with today's technology, no trace of Isla Bermeja has ever been found, lost to nature or erased by design. That's a mystery we may never solve. But what do you think? Well, let us know your wild theories in the comment section below, because that's why we're here. Number 7. Gruinard Island. Gruinard Island may look like just another patch of Scottish coastline, but for decades it was one of the deadliest places on Earth. During World War II, British scientists used it as a testing ground for biological warfare, specifically anthrax. Spores were released on the island, infecting sheep as an experiment. The result? Total devastation. Every single animal was dead within days, and the land became so toxic that even stepping foot on it meant almost certain death. For over 40 years, Gruinard was known as Anthrax Island, with warning signs plastered across its shores. It wasn't until 1990 that a desperate decontamination effort, 280 tons of formaldehyde, was used to cleanse the soil. The UK government now claims it's safe, but let's be honest, who wants to risk it? Anthrax spores can survive for centuries, and most people still refuse to go near it. Some places may look harmless, but history says otherwise. Number 6. North Sentinel Island. Some islands don't need deadly wildlife to be dangerous. Sometimes the people are the real threat. Enter North Sentinel Island, home to the Sentinelese, one of the last uncontacted tribes on Earth. And they're uncontacted for a reason. This tribe has spent centuries violently rejecting outsiders, making it very clear they don't want company. In 2006, 2 fishermen drifted too close. They were speared to death on sight. When authorities tried to recover the bodies, the Sentinelese fired arrows at the helicopters. In 2018, an American missionary thought he could change their minds. He didn't make it off the beach. The Indian government has since banned all access, not just to protect visitors, but to shield the Sentinelese from modern diseases that could wipe them out. The message is clear: stay far away. Because if the rough waters don't stop you, the Sentinelese will. Number 5. Bear Island. If you ever find yourself stranded in the Arctic, pray it's not on Bear Island, because there's no way out. Sitting in the icy Barents Sea, this isolated rock is as inhospitable as it gets. No fresh water, no food sources, and no chance of rescue. Historically, anyone who landed here either froze, starved, or simply disappeared. Even the name is misleading. There are no bears, just the ghosts of past tragedies. And in 2009, things got even creepier. A Russian research team reported strange lights and eerie activity near the island. Shortly after, they vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no wreckage, just gone. Today, the only sign of life is a lonely meteorological station, battling against the relentless cold. The rest? Just abandoned wreckage and an unsettling silence. If you ever crash here, don't bother waiting for help. You won't be making it back. Number 4. Bouvet Island. If hell had an ice-covered twin, it would be Bouvet Island. Sitting alone in the South Atlantic, halfway between Antarctica and Africa, it's the most isolated place on the planet. There's no permanent population, no wildlife, and nothing but glaciers, towering cliffs, and hurricane-force winds. But here's where things get creepy. In 1964, a lifeboat mysteriously appeared on Bouvet's frozen shore. No crew, no wreckage, no clues. The nearest land was thousands of kilometers away, and no ships had reported anything missing. To this day, no one knows where it came from, or what happened to whoever was on board. Even in 2025, Bouvet remains mostly unexplored. The weather is so brutal that only a handful of scientists and adventurers have ever stepped foot here. If you got stranded on Bouvet, you wouldn't just be alone, you'd be dead before anyone even realized you were missing. All right, guys, now let's talk about Number 3. Clipperton Island. Clipperton Island should have been paradise. Instead, it became the setting of a real-life horror story. In the early 1900s, Mexico established a colony on this isolated coral atoll in the Pacific. At first, life seemed manageable. Then, supply ships stopped coming. Stranded with no way out, the island's leader seized control, hoarding food and water while the rest starved. He became a tyrant, ruling with violence and fear. Those who resisted, they didn't last long. By the time an American ship arrived years later, only a handful of women and children had survived. They'd managed to kill their captor, ending the nightmare themselves. Today, Clipperton is nothing but rusting debris, shipwrecks, and an eerie silence. The Mexican government has no interest in reclaiming it. Some places aren't just abandoned, they're better off forgotten. If you don't have to do anything special in life, then places like this are perfect. Just be sure to say goodbye to all. Number 2. Sable Island. Sable Island, a lonely crescent of shifting sand 300 kilometers off Canada's coast, looks unassuming until you realize why sailors call it the graveyard of the Atlantic. Over 350 shipwrecks haunt its shores, swallowed by relentless storms and unpredictable sandbanks. Even today, the island's ever-changing coastline and deadly currents make navigation a gamble few win. But it's not just the wreckage that makes Sable eerie. Hundreds of wild horses roam the dunes, their origins shrouded in mystery. Some say they swam ashore from shipwrecks. Others believe they were abandoned by settlers centuries ago. Somehow, despite brutal winters and the total lack of freshwater lakes, these horses have thrived where humans never could. Sable Island remains nearly impossible to visit, with only a handful of researchers and weather station workers allowed each year. Here, nature reigns supreme. It decides who stays, and it's never people. Number 1. Tristan da Cunha. Think your hometown is isolated? Tristan da Cunha makes it look like Times Square. Smack in the middle of the South Atlantic, this volcanic rock is the most remote inhabited island on Earth. The closest landmass? Over 2,400 kilometers away. No airports, no hospitals, just a few hundred people live on the edge of civilization. Life here is relentless. Supplies arrive by boat, once a year. If you break a leg, catch an infection, or need emergency help, tough luck. You're weeks away from rescue, and the island itself isn't exactly welcoming. Sheer cliffs, treacherous terrain, and unpredictable weather make leaving nearly impossible. In 1961, the island's volcano erupted, forcing every last resident to evacuate. When they returned, they knew full well the risk of history repeating. Unlike other places on this list, Tristan da Cunha isn't technically forbidden, but once you're there, you might start wishing it was. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.